Hello everybody, this is Garrett from 11 Bang Bang. Pardon the quality, I just decided to shoot this real quick on my cell phone camera because I'm doing the research and we're preparing for the Springfield Trapdoor episode 2 of the history of the Springfield Trapdoor Rifle, the 1866. And for the last couple years I've been studying this subject and debating whether or not I should make this video, because I'm not the kind of guy who goes out there hunting other channels and mistakes they may have made. We all make mistakes on videos and such, but there is one particular mistake that has been made, actually by InRange TV. I'm just going to say it right now. And the mistake, I wouldn't even bring it up, I wouldn't even talk about it, except that it's literally starting to affect the market of the trapdoor rifle. And nothing necessarily against Carl or anything, but he has made a huge mistake on his trapdoor videos. As a matter of fact, there's many mistakes in his trapdoor videos. Take what he says with a grain of salt. I didn't want to make this video, but there's been several times at this point that I've tried to purchase an 1870 or a trapdoor model, and someone will be trying to sell a model 1868 and call it an 1870, and if you try to inform them that they're not correct on the subject, they will simply send you a link to the InRange video on the model of 1870. And that it's gotten to the point now where I've seen museums have it wrong, and like I said, gun brokers had it wrong, and even some auction houses have had it wrong. And anytime you try to contact these people and point out the differences, it will inevitably, like I said, circle back to this guy who has a huge YouTube channel, so he must know what he's talking about. Like I said, this is not disparaging anybody. I've waited years to make this. Didn't really want to make it, but it has to be said now because it's such an easy mistake to be fixed. All it takes is reading one book, even, which maybe a $10 book like this 58 and 50 caliber rifles and carbines of the Springfield Armory by Richard A. Holmesmere. And anybody, even Wikipedia gets this right. So let's quit messing around with the false information and let's just get this correct. What most people are calling an 1870 is actually a model 1868. And you might say, Garrett, why is this important? Because there's a huge value discrepancy between the two, and people are making far more money than they should, and it's inflating the value of the model of 1868. So, what is a model of 1868 and what is the model of 1870? Well, this is not in the series. I'll cover it a little bit further on, but I just want to get this out here right now. What you're looking at here, this is a model 1868. This is one that's probably been worked over by Bannerman. It's been sanded. The barrel is just 1 inch too short. And I've done actually some repair work on the stock, so it's not correct. But it is a true model 1868. These two rifles right here are model 1870s. So, what is the difference? Well, the difference is the model 1870 is a pretty rare bird. Take this model 1868. They made around 57,000 plus of these guns right here. Of the two model 1870s I have here on the table, they only made 12,000. And many of those have been butchered up and are not in correct configuration anymore because people got them and used them. What's the difference? Okay, very rarely is the model 1870 called the Allen conversion. Why is that? Well, it's a huge story and I'm going to go into it in the Trapdoor series, but let me just try to make it short right here. The model 1868, the model 1866, and the model 1869 cadet rifle, all those were considered conversions, and the government was getting away with making them on the cheap because they were converting original muskets. And some other companies and some people in Congress had major issues with this because they were in the middle of the Schofield trials and some other trials that were going on where legally Remington and several other people, Sharps, they all had their hands in the pot trying to get a military contract. And the government just kept putting them off, and they would say, well, we're only going to convert some muskets just to get us through, right? So originally the 66 and the 65 muskets, they were straight up Civil War Springfield muskets that were converted. Now, the thing is, they didn't have the strongest systems, as the 66 only has a door screwed to the top of the barrel and a hole cut in the barrel. So by the time they get to the 69 cadet rifle and the model 1868, which is this right here, they start completely removing that whole section. A lot of times they're building whole new stocks. You can tell if the stock has an ESA stamp and another stamp, that's a Civil War stock. But you'll start seeing that a lot of these stocks are only stamped ESA. What that means is they're making completely new stocks. They've cut the barrel off right here, threaded it in right about to back here, and they've made completely new receivers. And the trouble they had was that to do that, they had to sleeve these barrels down to 50 caliber from 58. So the barrel has a sleeve in it. They're adding this stronger receiver to the back, but in order to thread it in there, they've got to cut down so close to that sleeve that it's not very viable as a strength issue, because they're almost cutting clear through the old barrel and into the sleeve to thread it into this long nosed receiver. And as you can see, that receiver nose from here to here is almost 2 inches long. So they're running into this issue. So what they do is in the 68 model, they actually start making completely new barrels, and they won't be sleeved anymore. So they're screwing this barrel all the way into here, and what they decide is, we don't need all this extra nose right here, about halfway through production of the 68, because we started making brand new barrels. So we're going to have a nose that's only about 1.5 inches right there. Much shorter system. If you can see, it's milled right down in there. So they completely make a whole new model for it, or at least we designate it as a new model, and Springfield themselves did. The model of 1870. Now they have a real issue, because legally they're supposed to only be converting muskets. The model 1870 is a lot of times a new stock, a brand new receiver, and a brand new barrel. And a lot of times you'll even see brand new, these are the barrel bands, everything. Really the only thing they're still using from the original guns are the lock plates, because the hammers have been rebuilt at this point, and the butt plate and the bayonet. And so word gets out to Congress that, you know, we are no longer converting guns. We're making brand new guns, and we're not supposed to be doing that until the trials are over. And so they only get 12,000 of these made with the short nose. They have a brand new barrel. Like I said, some of them are made with Civil War stocks. Some of them are made with brand new stocks. They have a whole new sight system here, a little bit different. And so they only get to make 12,000 of these. Not even all 12,000 of those actually get out into circulation. As a matter of fact, most of them are sold for scrap parts after the trials come along, and for a very short period of time, the United States military actually does adopt the Remington rolling block from 1871 basically to 1873, and they make about 10,000 rolling blocks. But they had to quit making these, and these models are extremely rare because, like I said, only 12,000 made. A lot of them were actually sold for scrap parts and made into mix-up guns by other companies later on. And so what's the big discrepancy? Well, the big discrepancy is today, an 1870 should run you over $2,000 for a good one. And an 1868 should run you a little over $800 for a good one. But since there's these videos that are messing it up, and you can just look, it's very simple to see. I don't know if the camera can make that out. You can obviously see the huge difference between the model 1870 and the model 1868. To a Springfield trapdoor rifle collector, this is the same as calling a model 1892 Winchester a model 1873 Winchesters. They're both lever actions and they both shoot 44-40, therefore they're the same gun, right? No. Completely different story, completely different makeup. These guns are actual conversions. A lot of them have barrels. These guns are not actual conversions. They're made literally everything but the butt plate and the lock are made brand new for the gun. And so they're worth a lot more money. And if you go on Gunbroker right now, you will find at least one model 1868 common gun that they're selling as the rare model 1870. And why is that? Well, one of the big issues you're going to see is the model of 1868 and the model of 1870 can both say the year 1870 on the trapdoor. Why is that? Well, because back then they didn't stamp the model of the gun on the door. They stamped the year it was made right here across the back of the door. And this model 1868 actually says 1869 on it, even though it's not the 1869 cadet rifle, of which we have one of those too. Those are really rare too. Story for a different day. One of the easiest ways to tell the 1870 from the 1868 is, here's the 1868. Look how much sight is hanging over the back of that receiver because it's a longer nose. See that? The model 1870, not a lot of sight hanging over the back of that nose because the nose is shorter. And one more time, let me point out here, if you can make it out. Model 1870 says 1870 right across the line right there. This says model 1870. This is a true model 1870. Now this 1868 model, which like I said, it's not all correct because it's kind of cut up by Bannerman, but this one actually says 1869 because it's made in 1869. However, these could say model 1870 or even 1871 up here. So just remember, if you're looking to buy a model of 1870 and you're going to be spending a lot of money and the people are like, this is within the price range, remember, long receiver, that means it's an 1868. Short receiver, that means it's a model of 1870. Short receiver guns are worth 2 times as much as long receiver guns. At least they used to be, because now long receiver guns, people think they're model 1870s and they're paying the full $2,000 for. So, that's the end of that rant right there. I hope you enjoyed this video. You might ask, why do I have 2 model 1870s here on the table? Well, barring that, they did, not only did they just make 12,000, I believe it's 12,400 some of the 1870 rifles, they actually made 341 1870 carbines, and 21 of those actually ended up in Texas. They were really only made for trial, so it's one of the few 50-70 carbines that the government would ever test out in a trapdoor. And when we bought these two, we bought this one really cheap because the end of the barrel, if the camera can pick it up, the end of the barrel was messed up and I had to file it because it had a huge nick in it, and I filed it down a little shorter and the end of the stock was broken. So therefore this gun is never going to be original to what it should be. There's no front barrel band, no front anything. So what we're going to do with this gun, and like I said, don't worry, this gun is beyond ever putting back to original. The stock's gone, everything's gone. Even though this is a fairly expensive gun, we were lucky to actually find one that had the end broke off and the end of the stock removed, because we are going to convert this one to the trapdoor carbine. Obviously, we'll make sure that it's distinguishable from an original, but we're going to actually cut this one into the carbine and make it just like the carbine. So 2 guns that have been called model 1870s that are actually model 1868s. The gun of Geronimo that they have down there in the museum themselves will tell you it's a model 1870. They're not right. It's a model 1868. And the gun that was buried with Wild Bill Hickok was not an 1870, even though for years and years and years it's been called the model 1870 trapdoor. It's a model 1868 as well. These model 1870s were rare as hen's teeth even back in the day, because like I said, not many of them got shipped out, and a lot of them actually got sold and the parts got mixed up and they were actually made into other guns because they really were just test guns and never got out into service that much. The 68's by far the most common. I would say that if half of those 12,000 1870s survived, that would be optimistic. I imagine there's less than 6,000 still around today in original configuration. Well, I hope you stuck with me for this little rant. Like I said, nothing against these other channels, but you really got to get your history right, especially with the trapdoors, because it's not hard to study, guys. One book, just cracking one book will answer these questions, and I'm afraid some of these bigger YouTube channels don't even do that before they get millions and millions and millions of views on their videos, completely change the market for the trapdoor rifles. As always, trust in God, keep your powder dry. Bye.